Hello, my friend, and welcome to Secure Insecure. This is the Celebrity Mental Health podcast. I say it's okay to not be okay. And if you have the same mantra as me, then wherever you're watching or listening, give a 5-star rating, click that subscribe button, and leave a review. And let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. Now, let me tell you about my guest today. My guest today is a definition of power couple goals. As along with our partner Will, they spend their downtime surprising each other with many trips around the world. They love creating memories, which started when they met on Love Island in January 2023 on the winter version, where they coupled up on day 10 and have lasted ever since. Now, prior to Love Island, the UK version, Jessie was also on the Australian version, where she was an OG on season 2, lasting 34 days. So, to tell her mental health journey through Love Island and beyond, I'm delighted to welcome to Secure Insecure is Jessie Wynter. Hello, Jessie.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Well, I don't know if you both realise how much you inspire everyone when it comes to couple goals, to the holidaying, and the fact of just keeping that relationship alive the whole time and almost competing with each other of who can be the best partner.
I think the most beautiful part is how much it's actually surprised us both. We have an incredible relationship, but unfortunately, it's not my first relationship. And, I was 27 when I met him. So I really thought this type of love didn't exist and I wanted it with all my heart, but I didn't think I'd get it. And now that we've got it, we know how special it is. And I really hope we can encourage other people to feel this way and act this way towards their partner, because I do think we're living in such a connected world online. However, so many people do feel disconnected. And, I see so many TikToks of girls who are going through difficult relationships and whatnot, and same with men. And I think it is really important to remind people that love is still there.
What's the bit of Will's personality that brings out the best version of you in that?
I think one of the things about Will and I is how much we both wanted love. I think the love was very much reciprocated on both sides. And instead of us coming into the relationship selfishly, we've always been considerate of each other's feelings. So I think a lot of the times when I'd go into relationships in the past, I'd be worried about, if they're going to treat me bad instead of looking at how I'm treating them. So I think it's really important to kind of be at a really strong place with yourself to know and set boundaries for yourself, but at the same time, give those needs to the other person. What you want, they most likely want too.
How did you get to that level of going, okay, I've got to look at this positively rather than thinking that something's going to happen to me and I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to put my barriers up before I get rejected, to then go, actually, do you know what? There is this guy here. I'm on a TV show doing this, so obviously it helps it a little bit, but I can't have those boundaries so high. I have to let it down, because if I don't let it down, then no one's going to be ever able to come into it.
Oh, 100%. What you've just said pretty much sums me up. So when I came off Love Island Australia, I was single until I went on to Love Island UK, because I had those barriers up. And it actually really took a lot for me to let the barriers down with Will, even. Like internally, I was like, I'd always think of these excuses as to why not to do it, don't. But I would have to tell myself, do you want this relationship? Do you like him? Because if you like him, you're never going to find out whether you can have a relationship with him if you don't at least try. And I think I would just always have to remind myself, if for some reason I try and he does upset me or reject me or whatnot, I have to be so sure within myself that it's okay. So I think in the villa, it's a little bit different, but in normal life, I spent years working on myself instead of chasing boys. So I had a really good network around me. I had a really good life without a man. And it's like, if I were to get a boyfriend and they join my life, that would be amazing. That would be brilliant. However, without a boyfriend, I've actually got a brilliant life on its own. And I know that if for some reason things didn't go well with Will and I would be upset. But I always know that I've built really strong foundations for myself and I've got strong friendships that life would actually carry on.
Do you think that age 27, when you did that Love Island for the second time, that's when you truly found that you loved yourself, that you'd done all the hard work, and this was the reset, this was a zero again? I'm going, right, I actually love myself. I'm an amazing person. I've got my friends. I know my life. I know my strengths, but I also know my weaknesses. I'm actually ready to accept love rather than thinking I just have to be giving it all out all the time.
100%. I do really think that. And I think it is something that you will learn as you get a little bit older. But me with a social media platform, I would love to help other people avoid the mistakes I made. But when I was younger, I was in a relationship on and off for 7 years. It was not a healthy relationship whatsoever. I then went on Love Island Australia and I literally recoupled, I think, 4 times, because I'd be with someone, we'd find a flaw, it wouldn't work out, just jump to the next person. Like, I wasn't emotionally available, so therefore I wasn't attracting other emotionally available people. And then that kind of happened in my dating life a little bit after Love Island Australia, and that's when I decided I'm only going to attract people that are putting out what I'm putting out. And even though I think I'm putting out love and I think I want a relationship, I'm actually not entirely emotionally available, because whenever I meet someone, I put walls up and I will almost subconsciously set the relationship up to fail. So it took a lot of time to build self-love, really learn who I am and learn that it's okay to be single, and that it's okay to, all my friends were getting married. I was the only single one, but I was like, I need to make sure that I love myself, so that when I find someone who loves me lots, I love myself enough that I can give them even more love than I would give to myself.
And what about your parents and your grandparents? What were their relationships like together?
All my grandparents on both sides weren't together, but my mum and my dad have been together since they were 15 years old.
So you've had this
So
weird way of your parents who you've looked up to and going, love does exist. I can see it, and I can see a love journey. And if it started at school and it's carried itself through, yeah, you're going to go through ups and downs. But at the end of the day, love does exist. But then when you look at your grandparents, and they're the ones who have given your parents that knowledge, and it's almost like your parents have had to make up for what your grandparents didn't have. It then comes to you 3 generations down to go, well, hold on a minute. My grandparents on both sides aren't in love, so it didn't work for them. So yeah, my parents have made up for them, but who's making up for me, and who am I actually looking to see if love even exists?
100%. And I think one of the things is, when I went through my first love and it didn't last the way that my parents' love worked, I think I was really upset.
Mm.
Because my first relationship started when I was like 13, 14 at high school, and it carried on and off until I was 22, which was not long before I went on Love Island UK. So it took me a long time to process that, okay, I haven't got the same love story as my parents, but that doesn't mean that it's the end of the road for me. However, for a long time, I did think, I was like, I give up on love. I just didn't want a bar of it. But I think my parents have really given us children so much love. So they love each other, but they give us children so much love. And my younger siblings, actually, like my younger sisters never had a boyfriend. My younger brothers never had a girlfriend. I think our parents have really molded into us that, it's okay if you're not with someone, it's fine to be single. I do think we have a really strong family model that kind of keep us feeling confident and secure. But because I was that first one in the family to go through a broken relationship, but that took me a long time to recover from.
Well, that's what's really interesting, is because you set out the years, but within that timeline to 22, age 19, a lot of things start to change for you, and that's still 3 years left of that first relationship where certain triggers had manifested themselves into, this isn't just an extroverted issue, this is an introverted issue, and you started questioning yourself. Are you okay to talk about what you went through at 19 years old to set your story out? Let's start with body image, because 19 years
Mhm.
old, you've been in a relationship for a couple of years, and you've been very sexual, I presume. And I'm not saying anything, but my
Yeah,
point
no.
is that, and I'm not talking about if you've had underage sex or whatever, but you had a breast enlargement. And
Yeah.
having that at 19 years old, when you've already had that love, when you've already given yourself to another person, where they've seen you at your most vulnerable, they've seen you naked, and yet you still had that insecurity of, I'm not good enough. Because what most people think, look, like me, right? I think I'm a really fat guy. And I think, oh my God, that's why I'm still single, because I'm fat. And to go naked in front of another girl would be like, oh God. But you've done that, and yet you still went, hold on a minute, this isn't good enough for this guy. I need to do
Yeah.
something, because it's more about them than you. So let's start with the breast enlargement and the mental attitudes around that, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I honestly was so insecure about having small boobs. I was so insecure to the point where, like, I actually would not take my top off, with my boyfriend at that age, and I would not go to the beach in a bikini. I felt like I couldn't go to sleepovers with even other girls because I didn't want them to see me, like, if I had to get changed. And if I did go for a sleepover with other girls, I'd wear like a bra to bed. I honestly was so deeply insecure, and just for some reason, and anyone that feels this way, I urge them, I tell you, you don't have to give into it. But yeah, I just felt as though that is something I needed. And I also really felt, I think because I was so young and I didn't talk to anyone about this either, I just held it as there's something wrong with me, it needs to be fixed. That was kind of my mentality around it. So what I would do is, even when I was back at school, after school, I'd work so I could save up enough money to get a boob job. So yeah, I just felt like I needed to have that. And I don't necessarily know why. I think it is just the critical thinking I had of myself. And, I was insecure at that age. And I think that is quite a common thing. And, when you're dating someone at the age of 19 and maybe they're taking interest to other people, but you're very in love with them, I always blame that on me and not on, maybe this is a wrong time for us both to be in a relationship, or maybe I just always thought that if something wasn't going right in with my relationship, there was something wrong with me, and I felt getting a boob job was going to fix it. And for anyone that thinks this is the way it is, I can tell you right now, it's not. The issues after I got my boob job, the insecurities I had about myself, they still existed. It's just they manifested onto other areas, unfortunately. When I got my boob job and I went to the doctors to get the stitches removed, that's actually when I got diagnosed with body dysmorphia, because I come in and I think the doctor was actually quite mortified that so what I did is I was really naughty. I saved all my money and then I flew to a different state in Australia, went and got a boob job and didn't tell anyone about it. Like didn't talk to anyone, didn't tell anyone. I just did that all on my own behalf. So when I got back and told the doctors, obviously you can't tell my parents, I'm 19, you can't tell my parents. And then while I was in the doctors, I expressed a few other concerns. And I think, yeah, that's when they suggested that I had body dysmorphia, and they gave me a referral for a psychologist. And I remember just looking at her being like, what the hell? I remember thinking, what do you mean I don't see myself right? I'm so in the right here. I needed this boob job. Don't tell me I didn't. And I was so that far mentally unwell that I thought she was the stupid one. So obviously I didn't go see a psychologist and whatnot. From there, like I started to go down with body image. So I got my boob job, but then I was like, oh, now I'm not exercising enough, and maybe I'm not skinny enough. So I'd started dieting more, gymming more, and I think just I was so fixated on, and this probably could be partly ADHD, I was so fixated that I needed a boob job to fix everything. Got my boob job, okay, that issue's done, let's go. And then I just made another issue for myself.
Well, it's interesting because when I speak to a lot of Love Islanders, and on Secure and Secure, I've had over 100 through the series, the one thing that always comes up is validation. And when I look at Love Island, I think the ones who are watching and listening to this podcast, when they think of a Love Islander, they think if at school they were the most popular person in the world, they were the king and queens of their school. And actually what happens is the king and queens of our years at school end up leaving school in a kind of nothingness. They don't have a hierarchy anymore. And the ones who weren't rise up through the ranks. And then a show like Love Island comes along and they go, right, this is where I'm going to get my validation from. When you were going for the Australian Love Island, so for the first time, how validated did you feel in that experience? So about the fact that you're in your bikini, the fact you'd had your boob enlargement, you were more comfortable in your body now because you're showing it to everyone. Did you feel validated, or did you still feel like this is stage one, but there's about 10 more stages I've got to get through to truly love myself, to get you from the age of 22 all the way to the age of 27?
I think for me, going on Love Island, it wasn't necessarily about the validation process. I think it's because in some way, I really did want a relationship, because I dated someone for so long and then we'd broken up. So I had no clue how to date. I didn't know how to find anyone else. And obviously when we went through that breakup, I did have those feelings of I'm not good enough. So I guess in some ways, when you get invited to go on a TV show, it does make you feel a bit better about yourself. But as well, I just genuinely didn't know what to do with my life. Like I didn't know. When I was a little bit older, I worked at a bank when I was this is going when I'm like 21, 22, I was working at the bank, and I actually felt really sick with my mental health, and I had to quit working there just because I couldn't do it at the time. So I actually quit my job. So I was like, oh my God, I have got nothing at the moment. I didn't know what to do with myself. So when opportunities that were coming up, and I thought it was weird because I never felt like I was pretty enough to be someone on Love Island. So when these type of opportunities, Miss Universe Australia, I got asked to do that. So I represented my state in Miss Universe Australia, and then a couple months later did Love Island. So when these opportunities were coming up for me, I just felt like I can't really say no. I've not really got anything on. And the way I saw it is, I've actually got nothing to lose at the moment. I've got no hobbies, I've got no interest. So I'm kind of like a why not person. And I really saw it as a way to overcome mental challenges for myself. I feel like my whole life I did always get comments on like, you know, how I look and my physique and whatnot. And I felt as though, well, you know, this is all seems to be all I'm good at type thing.
So how did you then go into the UK Love Island after that with that mentality of going, right, reset, same shit, different day. You know, I've come all the way
Yeah.
around the world and it's still the same Love Island, it's still the same production. Going into that villa for that second time, and I know it was a year and a half ago, and I know everything's moved on, but if you can take yourself mentally back there, where were you at mentally at that stage?
So mentally, before I went on to the second Love Island, I like literally for a while I'd taken a step back from social media between Love Island Australia and Love Island UK. And instead of living in social media world, I'd gone back to Tasmania and started spending a lot more time with my family. I still continue to do stuff online like TikTok and whatnot, but I wasn't really in among the social media world, kind of like what Will and I have got now. I wasn't living in the city life. I wasn't going to the parties. I was secluded at home with my family. Then I was posting stuff on social media, but I still got to have that really wholesome time. So I think I really grounded myself and found what makes me happy in life, which was my family essentially. And then when the Love Island UK opportunity came up, so I was actually asked to go on the show. And I thought about it for so long because I was like, it feels stupid to say no because it's such a great opportunity. And I did have a lot of fun on Love Island Australia. But I was like, I'm actually really, really happy and content with my life right now. And I've worked so hard to get here. And suddenly an opportunity to turn it all upside down has come back again. But then when I kind of spoke to my best friend said to me, Jessie, if you don't go on Love Island UK, you're going to sit at home, you're going to see it on social media, and you're going to get FOMO. You're going to kick yourself. And she said, you probably won't get asked to do it again. Let's be honest. So that's why I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. But when I do it this time, I know who I am now. And I know that I'm not there to chase boys like I did on the last one. I'm not there to couple up 4 times. If I find someone I like, I will open myself up to them. As challenging as that was, I thought if you're going to do this, do it right. Love Island's a really good opportunity to find someone and actually get to know them really well, because what other experiences in life do you get where you're stuck in a villa with them for all that time? But I think sometimes with Love Islanders, they forget about, you know, the love concept and how great a relationship from Love Island could be. So because I knew that if I were to create a relationship in Love Island and it were to go well, that would be one of the strongest relationships I'll ever have. You don't have high school, you don't have areas where you can form such deep connections. So that for me, I was like, go into Love Island, open yourself up, have a real crack here. And if you don't fall in love, I get to fly all the way back to Australia. I can turn my phone off and I get to go back and live with my family. So I felt like for me, I couldn't lose.
And it's the interesting thing I think that people forget is that before you go in, when you're not an OG, you're in holding. But being in holding doesn't mean you actually get to go on the show. You've got producers asking
Mm.
you every single day, who do you like, who do you like, who do you like? And therefore, that connection is important. And obviously, they are making a TV show and it is entertainment. But at the end of the day, the fundamental part of Love Island is you are there to find love. And so you found that love, obviously, coming away from that show, and ignore Will for a minute, if that's okay. We'll just
Yeah.
park him over there. But just what did that do to your sense of self? The fact that you'd come away from a show for the second time, it had worked. Yes, you were dumped together from the island, but regardless, you were in a relationship. But age 27, you've done that experience, you've been in there for about 6 weeks. Did you come away going, right, I'm now ready to start this new journey of Jessie Wynter, chapter 3?
Yeah, I think it was like a new sense of self. And I think as well, moving away from my family and from my home country. But I think there were lots of times where I doubted myself, but I always reminded myself like that is just like I'm a very anxious person and I have struggled with anxiety for ages. I think that is just a natural part of being someone who has ADHD, quite frankly. And I, you know, out of all my friends, I'm definitely the anxious one. So now, though, differentiate with myself what is my anxious mind and what is me. So whenever I get feelings, I kind of have to sit there and be like, all right, is this you thinking or is this anxiety speaking? And because I can differentiate that, I will push through. So when I was even in Love Island, there were plenty of times where I would just almost freak out and have like anxiety moments, like, no, I'm done, I'm out. And I think apparently the public couldn't tell if I like Will or not. That's just because like I struggle to open up and I struggle to kind of freely let how I feel come out. Even when we came out, there were lots of times where I was like, oh my God, is this the right thing to do? Have I done the wrong thing? Should I just go home to Australia? And I just have to say to myself, Jessie, what's actually gone wrong right now? Like a psychiatrist actually told me this. Whenever I get anxiety, you need to think. So you've got a big loud noise in your head telling you that everything is going to go wrong, everything's bad, leave. And then I need to ask myself, what proof has ever been given to think that?
What's
So,
the worst that can happen?
yeah, what is the worst that can happen? And have you got any proof? Has it actually happened? Because I'm telling myself that, everything's going to crash down. I need to go home. But it's like, what's actual factual about that? Nothing. It's just anxiety that's talking. And so for me, and I wouldn't have been able to do this years ago. I would not have been able to do this years ago, but I've worked on myself so much that now I can kind of push through those things. And once I have learned to push through, and when I do push through, like, I'm literally living such a happy life now with Will.
Just picking up on what you're saying, when you come out of a show like Love Island and there is so much press and there's so much being written about you and Will, and you look on TikTok and there are a lot of comments, and there are comments about your relationship with Will and how authentic that relationship might be, and there's questions around Will as a person. When you've got that idea of what the psychologist said to you of where is the proof, and you're going, well, here's all these articles, here's all these comments, here it is all in black and white. How do you stop that anxiety taking over of going, yes, that's all being written online, but I know the truth, Will knows the truth, and actually the only people that matter are me and Will. It doesn't matter what all these journalists and random people on social media are saying about us both.
Yeah, so the way that I don't let the comments affect us is because we are just so strong when we're together. And regardless as to what people say, like, we really know that it is just like us. So even anything that happened in the villa, even if you ask like the other cast members, Will and I were so close throughout the whole villa experience. We were so connected. We communicated so well. But the producers do have a storyline to tell. So they just put up whatever they want, really. So an example I like to use when it comes to reality TV is, if, say, for example, I'm in Love Island and I cough, the producers can literally take that one cough and have the voiceover guy say, Jessie, thick today. And for the whole day, everyone could think I was unwell with a cold.
But also
So
they can move the little clips around as well to make that jigsaw puzzle. So they could take that cough, or if you shouted at Will, they could have put that 6 hours earlier in the timeline
yeah.
because it fits the narrative.
Yeah, and like when you're in the villa, you actually, because there's no time, there's no distractions, you don't have your phone, you repeat the conversations over and over again. And sometimes it can be like a happy, oh my God, I can't wait till we go out of the villa. And then if we're exhausted and producers ask us to talk about when we leave the villa, we'll be like, oh, I can't wait to go out of the villa. Not because we don't care, but because we're exhausted by that point. When you have the same conversations over and over and over again, they have 10 different tones of voices that they can use you saying the same things in. So we just both know that that's how the show works. We haven't watched the show back. We were at a really, really great advantage that when we were in Love Island, our social media accounts weren't active. So any of the, say, nasty and meaner comments, they'll be on other people's accounts. So we don't get a notification for that. And we didn't receive messages. So I think that also helped tremendously, because most of the negative comments, we don't really see that much. And occasionally when we came off, we would see them, but the good actually outweighed the bad, because when you do come off the show, generally your fans are the ones that are coming to your social media. And whereas when your social media accounts are active while the show's on, it's just a platform for anyone to come comment, come towards you. So we were at a real good advantage in terms of trolling, that our social media accounts weren't actually active. But like I said, Will and I, the way we overcome any types of trolling is like, we've had comments about like Will's sexuality. We've had comments about me only dating Will because I wanted a ticket to the UK. But the thing is, it just goes straight over our heads, because we're with each other all the time. Like we just laugh at those type of comments, really.
And I think that's really important to say as well. If there's questions about Will's sexuality, for example, which you've built up, you're still with him a year and a half later. So obviously it's not true. You wouldn't be with him if it was true. Let's all remember that. So the anxiety kind of lessens after that. And then a year ago, you get spiked whilst in Chicago. And so you have a whole new experience where that anxiety goes up again. And you've built all this up about, do I trust people? Do I let people in? You then become trustworthy again because you've let your barriers down. You've got Will now with you. You've been on 2 shows. And then this happened. What did that mentally do to you after being spiked, and your recovery process afterwards?
I think with anyone, whenever they go through something that is classified to them as somewhat traumatic, you never know at the time that you've got a bit of a trauma response, if that makes sense. So personally, at the time, I was like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. But then I think I started to see the repercussions of it kind of like 6 months later. When I go out drinking, I am nowhere near as fun as when I used to go out. And there were even a couple times when I would almost get like grumpy when we'd go out. Everyone would be, around drinking and whatnot. And I'd be grumpy, being like, everyone's too drunk, I need to go home. I think it really changed the way that I drink. It kind of, yeah, I think it triggered me a little bit. And I did kind of step back into that like anxious, organized. And I tried to convince myself that I was happy with not going out and I never wanted to go out again. And, I wanted to come home and do housewife stuff. And that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. It's just that I was in a state where I just wanted to completely avoid that happening again. And then coming with like the online trolls and stuff is I didn't want to go out drinking and then people comment on my social media, oh, you got spiked, you shouldn't be drinking. So for me, I was just like, I took a step back from that type of thing and I did become a lot more anxious.
And then bringing it up to speed now, a year later, that happens. Going back to that younger version of Jessie, when we put this all together and we go, I've had body insecurity issues, I've got the anxiety, I've got the ADHD, they're both diagnosed. I've been on Love Island twice, I found love, I have been spiked, my trust has gone up, my trust has gone down. What do you tell that 15-year-old self of yours who was going into that first relationship of, this is what my 20s are going to look like, this is what you're going to be expecting in the future?
The first thing I would tell my younger self is I actually don't believe that they would believe anything that I said, even talking about reality TV, because I come from rural Tasmania. My parents had me when they were 17, 18 years old. Like my first job was fruit packing, the McDonald's, and then waitressing. So firstly, my younger self would never believe that I would get to where I am. But I would tell my younger self, you're going to get very far in your life, a lot further than you thought you would. But the one thing you have to do is to kind of roll with the punches, and you have to keep going and not let any of these inconveniences stop you, because every time something bad has happened to you, you've actually come back bigger and better. Kind of just encourage myself to continue to push. And yeah, when something awful does happen, for example, drink spiking last year, I can't let that stop my journey and the good things. You have to push through it. You have to keep going, because something else will happen in life, and that's just how it goes. It's not necessarily what happens to you in life, it's your ability to deal with it, learn from it, and grow with it.
And you say your parents were 17, 18 when they had you. You're 10 years further down the line. Obviously, you're starting out this big adventure with Will, lifetime-wise. How cautious are you of having to try and catch up with them? Because it's really easy to go, my parents did it at that age, so therefore I've got to be like that. And, we look at the press and there's all these articles about, luckily you've got your 3-year visa now, but there's all these articles about you want to move to Manchester with Will and you want to have babies. And then everyone's saying you were at the BAFTAs the other week and you're going to be getting proposed just soon and da-da-da-da. And that's all the noise from the journalists, and that's what they care about. But forget about that. I just want to know about how you're feeling right now in the moment of not having to rush everything and go, okay, me and Will can take our time and till it's perfect.
I have 4 younger siblings as well. So what I like to say for them, because I always tell them, I'm like, they, as much as they probably won't listen, I always tell them, let me make the mistakes in life so I can teach you, so you don't have to deal with what I dealt with. But the way I kind of see life is there's like a bucket list, and I think it's really important to get the things you really want in order. For example, for me, I think it's important to travel the world before we have children. So last year we spent the year traveling because I'd not traveled very much, neither had Will. Buying a house and whatnot, doing things, for me, it's about doing things in the right order. So when it gets to a time, I don't feel like I've missed out. And I also feel like I can give the best possible life to my children. So I pretty much said to, Will, like, I will have children. I definitely want to have children, but I've got to complete my mini bucket list, because I don't want to bring children into this world and then have them to almost secondhand feel these feelings of, oh, my mum didn't get to go do this because she had me. So I want to make sure that I do my life in the right order. So when I do have children, they can get 100% of their energy and love, and I can teach them the best lessons. I know that doesn't always happen that way. And if it didn't, I do feel like I'd still be ready to take it on. But if I could choose, that's how I do it.
And so let's say we're being safe sex is being administered. Where are you on that bucket list and in terms of having those children?
So do you know what? We have spoken about this a lot, and we actually would be happy if it were to happen now. I think it would be a little bit of a challenge. There are still a few things, because when you think about it, social media and coming off a television show, when that's actually your primary source of income, that's actually not definite. Say, for example, someone comes off Love Island and they make some money. It might be a bigger amount of money than they made in previous years, but it's not going to last forever. So for me, like building those stable foundations are really, really important to my children. And we've been really smart since we come with the show, and we're saving, we're trying to stay at home and still budget as much as we can so we can kind of save and get a house. But I think the primary thing for me is to have a home for the children. So I'm happy as well. If I'm going to be at home with a child, I want to be at a house that I don't have to worry about moving a lease in 6 months. So I think getting a house is really important for us if we're going to have kids.
And have you got that house coming up? Where were we at the house?
We're hunting. So we
So,
are hunting for the house, yeah.
so the house could be within the next couple of months. Then you start trying. So realistically, we're probably looking at about a year and a half from now that you're going to have your first child. Please God, all going well.
Yeah, if everything goes well. And keep in mind, I'm 28 this year. So this time next year, I'll be 29. If it doesn't happen next year, we're leading to 30, 31, and we want to have a few kids. So we're very conscious as well of kind of like my age.
Well, this is what I wanted to come on to wrap this up. Of if you're going to be 28, 29, getting into your 30s, because your 20s were so definitive and so much happened there, going into your 30s and again, clicking that reset button, what type of mum do you think you'll be? Because you've grown up with a mum who was 17 years old when she had you. And so she was still quite young, trying to find out who herself was. You've got grandparents who weren't in love. You've got Will and you who are madly in love. So that the love is ticked, but when it comes to those parenting techniques that people pick up, and you've got this Australian way about you, but then you've also now got this British way about you, and there's similarities but a lot of differences. What is the next generation of Jessie Wynter going to look like?
So we've actually already discussed this as well. And I personally think that, and I've said this about relationships, when you get into a relationship, your life doesn't end. You still get to be you. And I think that's the same as when I have children. And I know that's probably easier said than done because it's definitely not easy. I've got 4 younger siblings and I'm 12 years older than my brother. So when we were kids and stuff, I helped out so much with helping raising my siblings because my mum was so young. So yeah, I know that it can be really, really difficult. But for me, I do think that we can still continue to live a very full life, and we would love to be able to travel back to Australia because I know that when we go to Australia, we've got my parents there who would be so excited about a grandchild, and they'd actually be able to help out a lot. And then Will's parents would be so excited as well. They would absolutely love it. It's like their dream as well. So I think we've got such good support of us either side, that I personally think that I want my children to be as creative as they can be. And I always say the more you see, the more you know. So I would love to give them kind of that like outgoing and let them explore as much as they can lifestyle.
Amazing. Well, my absolute thanks to Jessie Wynter for coming on Security School. If you love Love Island, there's loads of Love Islanders. There's about 100 in the Security School library, from Jessie's series, Maxwell Samuda, Ellie Spence, Tanya Ravens, Zara Luckamy Brown, Anna May Roby, Harrison Amani, and David Salako have all been guests before. We spoke about so many different topics on Security School today. And if you want more advice, beateatingdisorders.org.uk. When it comes to eating disorders and body insecurities, mind.org.uk if you're affected by what you heard about ADHD or also anxiety and depression, and stampoutspiking.org if you are worried about spiking. So please do go and check out those websites for more information. I'll put it in the bio as well. You've been listening to Security School with me, Johnny Seifert. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave a 5-star rating, leave a review, and click that subscribe button. And let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. On social media, at Johnny Seifert92 on TikTok, at Johnny Seifert at Security School Podcast on Instagram, and at Johnny Seifert on X is where you can find me. Jessie, where can people find you?
Jessie Wynter on TikTok and Instagram.
Amazing. You've been watching or listening to Security School with me, Johnny Seifert. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.